Okay, yes, you can now show. Okay, so that is, it is, yeah. So integrated multi-trophic aquaculture, IMTA, innovation in marine fisheries and its potential for economic development. So my slide is timed, so it can run on its own. So I'm going to give you an economic potential or some background on the economic potential of this. This one is on as much as fish production is concerned in Kenya. We are still importing fish, and this is not so good for us. And the situation is going to get worse because of the rising population and the dwindling of stocks in our lakes. So that's just an indication of the consumption of fish. Kenya per capita is around 4.5. Global is 20. We need time to change this and to increase the consumption of fish. So IMTA consists of using our waters, rivers, lakes, dams, swamps, and ocean to farm different species. So as you can see there, we are farming now fish and also seaweed at the coast of Kenya in marine cages and also along the intertidal zone. So this is a concept that now we are having many species sharing the same area. First of all, for economic sustainability and also for environmental sustainability. Seaweeds are sinks of carbon, so it is climate smart. So the IMTA system, first of all, we can also include high value species such as lobster that can fetch up to 3,500 Kenya shillings, and those other species. At the same time, we can also involve mangroves in the aquaculture system. So that's what is called silvi aquaculture for also environmental protection. And also you can also include sea cucumbers. So we are doing this with communities, and right now we are working in Kilifi, Kibokoni, we are at Kijiweni, and also other areas like Sunza in Mombasa County. Kibokoni, I've said, is in Kilifi County. So already we are on the ground with the communities and trying to implement this system, where we are now trying to train farmers on how to have many species on the same production systems. So we have economic plans, business plans, and the indications and the economic benefits are positive. The cash balance is good. So it can be sustainable in the long run. So for the economists, I think they can look at the returns and so on and so forth. So what are the opportunities and future prospects? So there are R&D opportunities for those who want to do research, site selection, infrastructure development, diversification and domestication of farm species, affordable and sustainable feeds needs to be developed. Also, we are trying to integrate this with other technologies. We are trying to introduce some kind of technology ecosystem. So we're also using solar technology for cooling and drying. So what are some of the products that can give us economic benefits? Seaweeds are antifungal, antimicrobial, antiviral, anti-cancer, anti-tumor. So there's so much potential in seaweeds. So if we can do the extracts and add value to our seaweeds, we can gain much more and we can develop our communities. So those are some of the areas where seaweeds are important: paper industry, battery filtration, bioethanol, agarose in the lab for biotechnologies, you know this. And of course, right now we are doing some value addition at Kibuyuni, where we're producing soap and some other cosmetic products from seaweed. So this is critical for value addition and for increasing returns from to the seaweed farmers. So this is a very interesting area, and we are hoping that this can help. But in the future, seaweed production and biomass production can help us in, for example, in power production. And we can utilize this to produce bioenergy. What are the engineering opportunities? Design of cages, construction of cages, launching them, and all this in the marine waters. There's a huge potential in our EEZ, and I think this one here will help us. KIRDI is a leader in leather production. We are producing leather from all kinds of animals, including fish. So as our production level rises, we'll be able to get also leather from fish. And this is very important for us also to kind of value add in the value chain of fish. We are seeking partners for aqua labs. We want to set up a system in the ocean where we can do further studies on the best way to harness our marine resources. So partners are sought in this level. So what are some of the projects that we are working on? I'm not seeing probably the slide, but I think we have a project that is called Seafort, that is handling seaweeds, amaranthus, and finger millet. We have Omari fish project that we are now trying to commercialize different products. And we also dealing with Blue Empowerment project that is dealing with empowering women to handle matters of blue economy. So those are our partners: ACTS, Kenyatta University, Technical University of Mombasa, Bahari CBOs, and others. So we have many partners, some of them that we are working with. But at the moment, we are testing systems, and we are hopeful that as more research scientists join our platforms, innovation platform, and also as more partners come with us to work with us together, we'll be able to open new opportunities and economic returns to our people. I'm happy to report that we'll be working with ACTS in the next intervention that is now going to digest, to synthesize and look at the different policy opportunities and policy pathways that can now help us to integrate IMTA in the economic system of Kenya. So thank you very much. I hope I economically used my 5 minutes, but if I have more, I'll take them in the question and answer session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kosambo, for that great insight in terms of the transformation that you are really undertaking in the aquaculture sector, especially looking at the marine sector. I think the members have really gotten quite a lot from your presentation, and I know the questions will be coming, and I see them coming. So I just want us that we have all the presentations, and then we will have the Q&A, because we have a session for the Q&A. We may also need to rest a little bit with time. So Dr. Kosambo, I know the questions will be coming in the chat, but we are having a session after this where we can have all these questions, we respond to them. Thank you so much, Dr. Kosambo, for your presentation.
Karibu sana.
Yeah, the next presenter is Dr. Catherine Kilelu from the African Center for Technology Studies, Nairobi. So Dr. Catherine Kilelu is going to talk about tapping into clean energy solutions for sustainable agri-food sector transformation in Kenya. So I believe this one is an interesting bit that we all want to hear. So Dr. Catherine Kilelu, you may.
Hi, Joshua, can you hear me?
Yes, I can get you.
Okay, great. Yeah. Okay, so as Joshua has introduced me, I'm Catherine Kilelu, and I'm part of the Agriculture, Food and Nutrition Security Program at ACTS. For the purpose of this seminar series, I'm going to briefly talk about opportunities for tapping into clean energy solutions for agri-food systems transformation in sub-Saharan Africa, the role of science, technology, and innovation, zooming in specifically on some of the interesting work that we are doing at ACTS to demonstrate what STI can contribute or catalyze in terms of agri-food, especially sustainable agri-food systems transformation. So to put it into context, I just want to highlight some of the grand challenges that we face as a continent. One is high post-harvest losses in the agri-food sector in the region. Reports indicate that we lose up to 50% of our production, of our food production, through post-harvest loss. And in some cases, it can go up to even 80% in very localized context. And in a situation where 248 million Africans are undernourished, which links to SDG 1 and 2, I think this is a very urgent issue that we need to address. And I think I've seen it being mentioned as one of the priority areas for Ghana. Additionally, the agri-food sector itself contributes to greenhouse gas emissions, but it's also equally vulnerable to climate change. So increased temperature, warm temperatures, less precipitation or too much precipitation. This links to SDG number 13. We have the agri-food sector taking up about 25% of the world's energy usage, and most of it is not clean or what we consider renewable, and that links to SDG 7. And then we see interesting developments happening at the technology frontier to support sustainable development ambitions or goals. But there are risks that have been highlighted that show technology advances also have the risk of perpetuating inequalities. So we need to pay more attention to how we have inclusive approaches to supporting sustainable development goals in achieving those sustainable development goals 10 and 9. And an important issue to highlight, and I think it has mentioned in one way or another throughout yesterday and today, is what I point out as a limited application of nexus approaches, so integrated approaches to solving our problems in the agri-food sector especially, is we tend to work in silos. So people who would be working in food or the agri-production side will be just focusing on the production issues and with very limited attention to, say, energy challenges, or in some cases, water challenges. So this limited application of nexus approaches is part of the challenge that we are facing. So what can STI do to support kind of an enhanced access to clean energy to enable food systems transformation in the continent? We are seeing increasingly that through global research and development, the cost of renewable energies, such as solar, has really reduced, and this is going to enable and is enabling access to affordable and reliable energy sources. So we need to see how we can use science, technology, and innovation to tap into this clean energy and also make energy use more efficient so that we can reduce, in this case, focusing more on post-harvest loss as one of the grand challenges, and to develop a more low-emission, sustainable agri-food system. We are seeing a lot of use and potential of tapping into off-grid solutions related to renewable energy, especially solar, for drying and cooling innovation that is allowing also inclusion of, say, smallholder farmers through, for example, solar drying. In Kenya, we are seeing interesting innovations around solar-powered milk chilling systems, as you can see in the picture there. And so when we talk about clean energy solutions, we are looking at it from the perspective of, the challenges we face with kind of dry chain issues. So drying as one of the solution, and then the cold chain part, which is the cooling solutions that we seek to reduce post-harvest losses. So what are we doing at ACT in terms of tapping into STI and really in very applied ways, mobilizing STI to bring some of these solutions to action? One of the initiatives that we're working on, I don't know if that bar is getting in the way. One of the solutions we are working on is on solar dryers. So scaling up an initiative that was started in 2019 to work on deploying solar dryers so low-cost solar dryers to smallholder communities to enable more drying of products that otherwise would be lost through post-harvest handling and some of the post-harvest management issues. And through this solar drying technology, we are also seeing opportunities for what we are calling climate action enterprises. So we have worked with the partners that are listed at the bottom there of the presentation, and we are continuing to work with them. So ACT is working with UNEP, especially in the first phase of this work, and a social enterprise called Eba Group Pamoja, to work on the design issues of these dryers and also supporting local fabrication. So reskilling youth and building their capacities to be able to fabricate these dryers. And then part of the STI or research and innovation that this initiative has been involved in is in working on optimizing the drying time for these dryers so that we can achieve a good quality of dried products. So achieving up to 10% moisture content, for example, for cassava, and so that we can address the challenges of mold and mycotoxins. And other dimension of this is not only the technology, but also the kind of institutional innovation around the access and use of the solar dryers. So instead of promoting solar dryers to smallholder producers so that they can buy them individually, we are working through a model where groups of farmers or women or youth can acquire the solar dryers and then offer a service, a solar drying or pay-as-you-dry services. So the business model that accompanies the technology is also an area where we are trying to optimize and see what is the best model for enabling smallholders to use this technology. So doing some willingness to play analysis. And this we have seen to be working very well. And so we are going into scaling up model, scaling up phase for this model, where we're going to be deploying more dryers, but also working on optimizing their design and their efficiency, their use in the drying process. And so STI is very central to this whole model of drying as a solution, drying as a service to smallholder farmers, and how that also will enable them not only to reduce their post-harvest loss, but also to tap into the dry food markets that through agro-processing. Another initiative that we are involved in partnership with the University of Birmingham, London South Bank University, also with local community farming groups, is to explore the use of clean cooling technology-driven solutions for eliminating or reducing post-harvest loss for produce that need cooling. So the aspect of cooling is not necessarily new, but what is interesting about what we are doing with this model that this project is implementing is first trying to understand what the demand for cooling is. And the demand for cooling is also used or understood in a much more integrated way. So understanding that smallholder farmers do not produce one single product, and they work with multiple products, and how do we develop a solution that is much more integrated than just a single kind of value chain approach to finding cooling solutions. So we are working a lot with estimating demand from an economic perspective, from the design aspect, so a lot of engineering is involved in this process, and this system is also looking at how do we integrate other challenges or other issues that communities are facing. And a particular one that we are interested in integrating is the question of how or whether it's possible to integrate cooling demands for animal and human vaccines. And especially with the COVID now, we know that the cold chain of human vaccine is one of the challenges why we are seeing low numbers of vaccination, of course, apart from access. So the cooling hub, that community cooling hub idea that we're implementing is sort of a living lab that we are working with to learn how we can use STI-driven integrated design concepts for cooling solutions, cooling technology, and also looking at how this through this experiment that we're testing out with different partners is to see how it will translate in terms of reduction in post-harvest loss, improve diets, enhanced access to vaccines, create rural jobs, reduce greenhouse gases emissions, and then lead to more resilient communities. So the integrated nature of this innovation is what is novel. So what are some of the issues that we have, or reflections from what we are implementing at the moment? And I think it has been mentioned with many other speakers, is that systems approaches to agri-food sector development is critical. So the nexus approach, looking at food, energy, and the water linkages is critical, and not looking at solutions from a very silo perspective. Research community industry partnerships are absolutely necessary. And of course, we continue to see the link between research and industry to be a bit weak. Interdisciplinarity is key. It has been mentioned also in many presentations. And in all these, the two initiatives that I've mentioned, we are collaborating between engineers, economists, agribusiness specialists, food scientists, anthropologists, gender experts, innovation scientists, ICT scientists, and the list goes on. So the interdisciplinary dimension is very key. What I wanted to mention here is that there's an emerging network of scientists and industry players that are part of the Africa Center of Excellence for Sustainable Cooling that's hosted in Rwanda that we're now plugging into. And these networks are also important in driving the STI agenda in terms of learning and cross-learning between countries, the region, and across the globe. I think in conclusion, you can just say that harnessing the potential of STI through alignment with the Sustainable Development Goals is important in terms of addressing some of the grand challenges that we're facing as a continent. So I'll stop there, and yeah, thank you for your attention, and look forward to the question and answer session.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kilelu. Thank you for bringing the insights and trying to look at agriculture in the whole nexus that is really important in terms of transformation of the agri-food sector. So at this juncture, I think we will wait for the questions in the question and answer session. And let me bring on board Dr. Rose Omari from STEPRI in Ghana. Dr. Omari is going to talk about the role of science, technology, and innovation research in strengthening policy and regulatory frameworks for food safety in Ghana. I hope she can present within 5 minutes. Thank you, Dr. Rose. Do we have her? Okay, yeah, I see. Yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone. So I am coming from the Science and Technology Policy Research Institute, and my director has already spoken about our work, and we've been doing a lot to contribute to policy development and also to strengthen policies. So we, as researchers, we have come to realize the need for evidence-based policy. There is a lot of pressure on us to prove that indeed our research or our work is having an impact on policy. And we also notice that policy development and implementation over the years have been weakly informed by research evidence. And there are a number of factors associated with this, because there's always a lack of consensus among policy researchers and policymakers. There's also poor understanding of the policy process by researchers, and so they sometimes make unrealistic recommendations. And we also have inadequate capacity of policymakers to make use of the research evidence. So a number of organizations have been trying to understand the best approach to actually bridge the research policy gap. So our work has been to show that, in fact, researchers can really make an impact. So talking about food safety, in Ghana, we have several food safety challenges. We have physical contamination, stones in rice, in beans, etc. We have microbial contamination, chemical contamination. Some are intentionally added, some do not intentionally, and we also have the naturally occurring ones like the mycotoxins. So it's been shown that in Africa, we have about 31 different food hazards that contribute to about 91 million foodborne illnesses and about 140,000 deaths. This is in Africa. And the burden of foodborne disease is similar to that of HIV/AIDS, TB, and malaria. And we have noticed that aflatoxin is one of those food safety hazards that affect us. It has negative impact on health, our trade potentials, and also on food and nutrition security. I'm sure we have a lot of Kenyans here. You have suffered a lot by losing about 125 people in 2004, for example. So in Ghana, we have had several projects that have been implemented to really contribute to managing the aflatoxin problem. But we don't see much impact, mainly because the projects are fragmented and they are not well coordinated. So we felt, as scientists or as researchers, we felt that having a policy in place will enable us to harness all the collective strengths in the various institutions and among the various stakeholders so that we can effectively manage aflatoxins in Ghana. So that was what led us to this policy development project. So this process was initiated by researchers, and then we adopted, as I mentioned earlier, there are a number of models for bridging research policy gap. We adopted the engagement model, which actually ensures that there is continuous interaction among policymakers, researchers, and all other stakeholders. Because of time, I will not go much into this, but the main characteristic is that there is that collaboration, there is a consensus among all the objectives and the goals that are set. So we started the aflatoxin policy development process by establishing a national steering committee. And the steering committee has several functions, and one of them is to serve as champions that will lead all advocacy efforts. We did a situational analysis looking at the problem of aflatoxin, the health and economic effects, how to control it, the teaching and research capacities. All these, we assemble all the issues, the policy and regulations relevant for aflatoxins, and we also try to look at barriers that affect policy implementations. So after doing all this, we did a stakeholder workshop where we validated the stakeholder, the situational analysis report. And then we started to set the agenda for the policy development, where we set the goals, we developed the objectives and all that. So after that, we had a series of stakeholder consultations and several workshops with different groups of stakeholders. So at the end of all this, we were able to come up with a draft policy, which we now presented to 4 ministries, because we realized that no single ministry can solve the aflatoxin problem. So we identified 4 ministries: Ministry of Environment, Science and Technology, mainly for research aspect, STI and all that, Ministry of Health, Ministry of Food and Agriculture, and then Ministry of Trade and Industry. So these 4 ministries, actually we met with all of them, we presented the issues to them, they bought into it and agreed to endorse the policy. Then after all this, we had a draft policy that was we now presented it to our sector ministry for the next phase, which is to submit it to the cabinet for approval. So I would say that having gone through all these processes, we had a very clear vision, which is mainly to improve harmonization and coordination of activities among all stakeholders so that we can effectively manage aflatoxin. And the goal is to protect human and animal health and increase income of all value chain actors. And we can only do this by reducing aflatoxin contamination. So it also has 7 clear objectives. And I'll only emphasize one, which is to strengthen research and technology development and transfer, because we realize that a number of strategies exist, but they are only with researchers. We are not able to transfer them to the users to use to manage aflatoxins. So in order to facilitate the approval and implementation of the policy, we integrated all the findings we got from our situational analysis so that we can eliminate all the barriers that will prevent the implementation or will hamper the implementation of the policy. Because of that, we developed an implementation plan with budgets. The roles and responsibilities were clearly spelled out. We made provision for capacity development of all stakeholders. We even developed a resource mobilization plan. A communication strategies were developed so that we can create awareness about the policy. We even went ahead to even secure a grant, and that grant is to enable us to prioritize actions in the aflatoxin policy so that we can be able to implement actions that will make the maximal impact. Then we also developed a technical regulation to which will facilitate the enforcement and compliance with aflatoxin standards. So briefly, some of the achievements we have made are that our technical regulation has been enacted by Parliament in December 2020. All the 4 ministers have jointly submitted a cabinet memo to Parliament. And 3 weeks ago, I was invited to a cabinet committee where we presented a policy, and they have recommended that the policy be approved as soon as possible because they said it is long overdue. We need such a policy to be in place. There's heightened stakeholder awareness and interest in aflatoxin issues. And we have also produced several knowledge products. Situational analysis report is available, policy briefs, and then we even develop a code of practice for aflatoxin control in grain. All these documents are available for public use. So I will conclude by saying that it is important for us to integrate research evidence in news policy development to improve their adoption and implementation. And the development of policy can be initiated by any actor. It doesn't have to come from the policy makers. And high level consultation and advocacy are very critical to get government buy-in. Stakeholder engagement, we cannot ignore it because we need them because they are going to even implement the policy. They have various roles they have to play. And seeking funding through various means, proposal writing and all that, and donor engagement is very key. And also dissemination of outputs is relevant so that we can create awareness about even the policy development processes and the implementation. We did not ignore media at all. They were part of the process right from the beginning. And this has actually whipped up the interest of public in this aflatoxin policy. Finally, policy development is not an easy thing, it's complex, and it requires research. It requires adequate resources, time, and also the patience of all stakeholders, including funders. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Dr. Omari. I think your presentation is to the point with quite a lot of insights, especially in terms of evidence-based policy development. I think now we are moving to our last presentation in this session. We'll be having Dr. Julius Ecuru from Bio-innovate, ICIPE. So Dr. Julius will be sharing with us the work of his organization. So Dr. Julius, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Joshua, and good afternoon, colleagues. I also want to thank Professor Gada and the team at ACTS for inviting me to be part of this webinar. I'm also very, very grateful to meet Professor Norman Clark and Professor John Mugabe, who were my mentors at ACTS way back in 1999. So very honored to be with you in this forum. So I don't have a presentation, but I'll just make a few statements based on the topic we have and the work we do in Bio-innovate Africa. As you know, we have had 3 important global events this year, which have implications for our food systems. The first, as you may note, was the 6th assessment report of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. And this report warned of a catastrophic global warming if we do not cut carbon emissions to net zero by 2050. And then the second was the Food Systems Summit, which really called for an integrated development of food systems. And then the third and most recent one was the COP26 Climate Summit, where, as we had, several countries made non-binding pledges to cut carbon emissions in the foreseeable future. So as we know, the current food system, and I think it is Catherine who put it very well, in terms of production and consumption is very unsustainable. If you look at us in developing countries, farming practices usually are based on expansion of acreage instead of intensifying production. We also see farming really characterized by improper use of agrochemicals. And if you look at the consumption side, again, Catherine mentioned, post-harvest losses are extremely high, 40–50% in different countries. Food wastage is also huge, and food distribution is weak because of inefficient supply chains. So you have a situation where you have plenty of food in one part of the country and scarcity in another part. So overall, when you look at the food systems, it's very unsustainable and contributes, up to 25% of the global carbon emissions. In Eastern Africa, food production and utilization of agricultural residues and bio-waste is suboptimal. And the reason is that we are not applying sufficiently science and technology, and we have very limited innovation to promote value addition and bio or agro-processing. Therefore, my argument is if we are to transform the food systems, we should first and foremost make it more sustainable. And what we do in Bio-innovate Africa is use scientific knowledge to develop appropriate inputs for our farming systems. So we look at better crop varieties, we look at using ecological-based approaches like biofertilizers, biopesticides, and so on and so forth as part of the intensification process. And then we also foster innovation, and I think this is critical for us. Innovation to develop value-added products and bring them to market. So we really emphasize bringing to market as the more sustainable pathway to growth and wealth creation. And so we are looking at things like community biorefineries to absorb the farm produce from our farmers, and also link farmers to new value chains, both in the local environment, but also nationally within the country, regionally, and hopefully globally when we get to more advanced biorefined products. So in our work then in Bio-innovate, as I said, is to bring these new ideas in food systems to market. We emphasize bringing them to market. So creating business prospects out of this. And of interest to us at the moment is integrating value-added insect proteins to food and feed value chains. And then also getting novel products out of orphan crops like millet and sorghum, which a lot of our communities depend on. Improving seed systems, especially using micropropagation techniques, so that we don't encroach on lands that we can use for conservation, but also using microorganisms, especially in industrial processing, like enzymes. And the other part which we are putting a lot of emphasis also is in integrated wastewater management systems to ensure that we have clean drinking water and also water for production. So these are key areas that we work on, but integral to our work also is finding ways to conserve biodiversity, including agroecologies, because we believe doing this ensures proper regeneration of biomass, which is a crucial input of feedstock to our value addition and agro-processing activities. So we also integrate digital solutions as part of the innovation process, especially in aiding our work in improving disease diagnostics and also disease and pest surveillance and so on and so forth. So in summary, for us, I think food systems transformation is critical. We have to make it sustainable by applying science and technology. And in the case of Bio-innovate, fostering innovation that actually move these ideas, inventions, and creating businesses out of them. So thank you, and I hand back to you, Joshua.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ecuru. I think those are great insights coming from you, and in terms of also ensuring that the great innovations we have are actually out there, commercialized. I think at this juncture, we are well past our time, but I believe we can take one quick question that was to Dr. Kosambo. This one is from Dr. Kosambo, is to Dr. Kosambo from Caleb, and this is what he says, that those are great efforts. He's asking what are the specific roles that, I don't know what you and I are playing in these efforts. And then he also just inquires about how are these initiatives that you are doing in the area of the IMTA funded. I will also combine the question with one that was directed to, I think this one was to Dr. Omari. Yeah, and he says that you can highlight the key challenges you encountered in the whole process, of trying to really shape food safety policy in your country. So that's the question. I think we can, if you can take 1 minute to respond each, like Dr. Kosambo takes 1 minute and Rose takes 1 minute. I'll appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. So I assume that he meant universities and other institutes. They are all under participation in our initiatives. So I already answered. We are collaborating with our local universities and also international universities to develop modules, training modules, and also to help us in designing and disseminating training documents and instruments to the grassroots, and also in identifying students and young scientists from universities for internship and also for industrial attachment on our platforms, either at the institute at business incubation level, but also in the field for data collection and also for technology transfer. In terms of the funding, we have the funding, number one, the usual RTI funds from the institute offered by the government, but we also tap into the National Research Fund that is being managed by NACOSTI. So they're also helping us to fund this, and also we collaborate with international partners to get international funding from other development agencies. Thank you.
Thank you. Ross, would you give a go?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, for us, what made our work easier for us was the fact that we have funding. And also we had the evidence to show. So we were able to prove that aflatoxin is a problem and everybody got on board. The main challenges we had was actually due to the COVID pandemic. Because it was a project and we were working within a timeline, the COVID pandemic affected our stakeholder engagement. And you cannot do a policy without engaging with the stakeholders. So that actually delayed the process. And then somewhere along the line, we also had elections in Ghana, and a new government came into place, and the cabinet was dissolved. Because of that, we didn't, for about half part of the year, we didn't even have a cabinet to look at the policy. So for me, I think these were the main challenge. The political activities affected the process, but because we had funding and all that, we were able to pull together a lot of stakeholders, and then we whip up their interest in the whole process.
Thank you, Rose and Dr. Kosambo. You have just taken 1 minute each, and I think we are well within our time. For any further questions, we will compile them and then send them to our presenters who can respond to them directly. And I think we have got a lot of take home from this session, and you can see some of the initiatives are promoting what were non-conventional food sources, like in the IMTA. You can see that that actually is being promoted. So it is just not thinking within the box, but also without the box, as we generate these solutions. And you can see from the presentation by Dr. Kilelu, really pointing out that essence that there is that need for multidisciplinarity, and we need to really pursue that in terms of not looking at these sectors in silos, but also trying to promote these solutions, having them all inclusive and trying to bring other disciplines also on board. And also from the angle of Omari, looking at evidence-based policy development, and you find like also bringing it forth as an all-inclusive process. And lastly, the work that Bio-innovate is pushing, and about also the bit of one interesting bit that trying to really have these solutions and the innovations out there being taken up, and having that commercial aspect of it. So I want to thank all the presenters for this session. I will feel appreciated by on behalf of ARCS and also on behalf of the CDLF Foundation, and also to our listeners. I think now we are moving to the next session, which I want to bring on board Dr. Samuel Pate. Dr. Samuel Pate is from UNESCO, and is going to, because all along from in the morning, this question has been arising with regard to issues to do with the indicators and the data, especially in the STI sector. Do we really have them in Africa, and what are we doing about them? I think Dr. Samuel Pate is the right person to respond to this. So Dr. Pate, the floor is yours. Thank you so much, Dr. Pate.
Thank you very much, Joshua. I've just been sitting here following the discussions, and I just thought that I should just highlight some few things that I have learned from the discussions, and also some critical actions that we need. I already see that some of them are already underway. And I first and foremost want to thank Professor Gada, the team, for organizing this, and also inviting me to share my thoughts on this. So first, I realized from a lot of the presentations, so yesterday we began looking at application of STI in fisheries, aquaculture, and others. And today I see in food systems, food safety, clean energy, and then also STI for the SDGs. And you can see that there's clear evidence that we need to establish STI baselines, that are informed by data. And so you see that a lot of the presentation that we have seen, for instance, in today, are talking about situational analysis, that is trying to establish what is the STI applications in the various sectors, that are also linked to the SDGs. And we heard from the colleague that presented from Ghana that there is no way that we can have policies without data. We need to create the necessary evidence to be able to find the avenue and the entry points for developing STI policies. So I must say that in all that we have heard about since yesterday, and then also today, we see the need that part of trying to diagnose the problem and see STI contributions in driving the sustainable development goals and national priorities is having STI baselines established based on nationally adopted indicators. And I can talk of Kenya, that the country has been able to define some internationally comparable indicators for STI. There will be the need to also, as part of situational analysis, look at what I call a target setting, try to see what do we want to achieve with STI, because I've looked through the literature and I found that it is very difficult to really see in terms of metrics and others what percentage contribution. For instance, we can say STI is contributing to, let's say, energy security or food security and other socioeconomic indicators. And I think ACTS have been very instrumental. Last year or two, I was in one of your workshops where you were looking at the metrics for STI, trying to do a comprehensive desktop study and also stakeholder engagement in that aspect. Now, once we have a very good situational analysis of the STI landscape and other innovation ecosystems, we'll be able to also prioritize STI interventions and policy actions. And I see that a number of the presentations that we've had today also talk about this. I always ask our member states that, for instance, if the World Bank or any development partner decides to give your country $250 million to invest in STI, what are your priorities? If, for instance, they say they want to invest in the energy sector or food security, food sector, agriculture sector, what are your priorities? And you realize that a lot of the countries do not have prioritization frameworks for STI. Today, we've learned of STI applications in the energy sector, in food safety, and all that. So what are the priorities, for these countries? And so as we do our situational analysis, these are some of the things that we need to also think about. And we can do this through a multi-stakeholder approach, which has also been highlighted. And this will also help us to develop national STI investment plans. You will see that a lot of countries are trailing the 1% GDP contribution to STI. And so there's the need to look at supporting the countries to come up with STI investment plan. Now, once we have a prioritization framework and also able to define our policy actions, we look at designing and implementing STI actions. For instance, there's the need to have a monitoring and evaluation framework for STI based on established indicators. Like I mentioned, how would we be able to assess that a technology was able to reduce poverty by, let's say, 2 percentage points? There will be a need to have these kind of frameworks. So as the colleagues look at STI for SDG, I think these are some of the dimensions that we need to put into it so that we can create the necessary evidence to support policy actions. There's also the need for open science. I mean, in the UNESCO General Conference, they approved the recommendations on open science, which is a call for data sharing, knowledge sharing without any restrictions. Because if we want to work together, there is a need to share information on what technologies and innovations are helping a country A, to achieve its food security, energy security targets, and what lessons can be learned. And by doing so, we'll be able to also promote inter-country learning and cooperation, and also disseminate, good practices. I know in the UN, the UN department in charge of, they call it Technology Bank, is trying to document best practices, related to SDG targets. And so there will be the need to have a compendium of, for instance, homegrown technologies and innovations that are helping countries to accelerate progress towards national development priorities and the SDGs. And then lastly, I heard also in the presentations, a lot of people talking about a multi-stakeholder approach to the implementation of STI actions. And so I have here a kind of a framework that is looking at a multi-stakeholder national policy dialogue platform on STI. I think there will be the need for the different players in the STI landscape to come together. And so if you look at issues of fisheries, food systems, there are a lot of organizations. Some of them are research organizations that have developed technologies that can be brought to scale. There are some that are policy think tanks. There are some that are also development partners who are looking for the opportunities to invest in technologies that can drive development priorities. And I think there will be the need for all these stakeholders to come together in what I have been proposing to the countries called National Policy Dialogue Platform on STI to generate knowledge, through building the scientific evidence to develop knowledge products such as policy briefs, you have research papers, something that can improve the science policy interface. And then looking at also some review of knowledge products, development of policy tools, methodologies, building capacities of institutions through workshops and meetings. And by doing so, we'll be able to enhance the science policy interactions on the issue of STI. So these are the take homes that I got from a lot of the presentations and what I want to recommend to the various panelists and stakeholders that are gathered here today. Thank you very much, Joshua.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pasi. I think that would be a great way to wrap up today's discussion and the insights coming from you, especially with regards to the whole discussion we have had the course of today. At this juncture, I think we are well spent for time, and I think it is now my pleasure to hand it back to Professor Gada, because I don't see Dr. Tell around. I can hand it back to Professor Gada. Thank you.